Okay, so I was taught to greet in Shona, so my squatter say? Okay, fantastic. I want to learn, so if I'm not pronouncing it properly, you can tell me. I don't take it personal. In learning, you have to be willing to make lots of mistakes to get better, faster. And in my native tongue, I would greet you by saying, Una kushe o audi body. So, kushe, audi body. So, audi body is how are you doing, right? In Sierra Leone, we're very worried about the body, so we're always asking, audi body, so are you well? Is more or less what we're saying. Okay, so today's topic is one that's near and dear to my heart because in the year of our Lord 2016, I was blessed to go and work at Google. And I was working as a human resource L&D professional, but I had a reason for taking that job. I had actually started my own startup that was called Leapfrog Africa. And Leapfrog Africa was looking at healthcare. But we didn't understand the technology. So when I took the role at Google, it was a stealth mission to learn the technology. And the good news is it's brought me here today. 8 years later, 9 years later, I understand AI. I understand all the technologies that we don't know about yet, and I understand what's coming. And the one thing I can tell you is what's coming is going to blow your mind. But before I get into my actual talk, I wanted to address a couple of things that I've already heard. So the first one is AI is going to take your job. So I believe very much in quoting philosophers to answer questions. So the question should be, is AI going to take my job? So let's ask the great philosopher, Melly Mel of Grandmaster Flash. Those who understand rap get the joke. So they had a song called Beat Street. And in that song, he says, and I quote, "And don't be afraid of no computer, because the children of man inherit the land, and the future of the world is in your hands." So AI is a tool. Let's just start there. AI is a tool. It cannot replace you. It cannot. It can enhance you. It can allow you to be much more effective. It can amplify you. It cannot replace you. Second point on this notion of can AI replace us? At Gibbs, I teach an elective that's been running for 17 years. Business opportunities and innovations in Africa. It's my favorite course to teach at Gibbs, and it's one that the students like. And oftentimes, I would introduce new topics to them. So we've had conversations about AI the last 2 years. And one of the provocations I ask them is, okay, since we're afraid that AI is going to replace our jobs, what jobs can AI replace? And I'm curious, in this august audience, what jobs do you think AI can replace? Feel free to just share and I will amplify it and repeat it. What jobs can AI replace? Yes, sir. Coding. Okay. So coding currently is one of those areas where AI is able to help coders to do much more effective coding. It's not yet at the stage where it can code on its own. It still needs someone who understands coding. If you don't believe me, there are promises that you can have no coding skills and you can build your own AI applications. Try it. And you will see over time that you can do a lot without knowing coding, but you can't really build an application yet. Now, it's possible that in the future that would be the case, but not yet. Any other jobs that you think AI can replace?
I think anything that's repetitive, any repetitive work, any repetitive work, sometimes even things like, writing essays.
Yes.
Let me end it there, yeah?
Okay, fantastic. And I'm so glad you brought that point up because AI as a tool can help really poor writers to be much more effective writers. AI as a tool, unfortunately, cannot help our best writers to become better. Why? I'll take a step back and then we'll take a step forward together. AI the AI that we're using is based on something called large language models. You might have heard this, LLMs. What is an LLM? An LLM is an application that is actually a technology that is behind the application of things like ChatGPT. But what is the actual technology? So what that technology is it looks at data sets, right? And the coder, to this young man's question, creates what's known as an algorithm. Now, the algorithm is the instruction for what the technology should do. And once the instruction has been given, then what they do is they train that algorithm using data. So they would basically divide up. So imagine this room is a room full of data. They would divide up the room like in half and say, okay, this is the training data. Here are the instructions. And they will run different iterations to train the model on how to deal with that data and how to come up with answers or solutions. And then the rest of the data, they would say, this is the data that we're going to use to now test whether or not this thing can do what we said it can do. So when it comes to writing, what we've done very effectively is we've taken everything, and when I say we, I'm talking about the big tech companies like Google, because Google started it first, and then OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, then followed Google's model. So we take all the writing that we can find on the internet, and there's a lot now on the internet, and that's what we train ChatGPT on. So when you go to ChatGPT and you say, hey, help me write this speech, it will help you. I just came from Ghana, Accra. For the past 3 days, we had another conference, and I met a very, very accomplished businesswoman who was sharing with me her story of writing speeches with ChatGPT, only to find out that someone else had written the same speech. Yes, right? And how is it possible that someone else can write the same speech as you? Well, it depends on something called prompting. What did you tell ChatGPT you wanted? And what did that other person tell ChatGPT they wanted? If you both tell it the same thing or something similar, you're going to get similar results. So yes, it can help any one of us to write better, to write more effective, but it cannot replace those great writers who, for example, may not have written their great novel yet, right? If it's not on the internet, if it wasn't in the data set, it doesn't know how to do that. So I actually shared something with it that might be helpful to you as well as you think about AI and prompting, how to be more effective. It's called Scribe. It's a method of creating prompts that actually get you unique results. So let's go through this together. S stands for situation. So you will tell it, my situation is, I'm going to be speaking, I'm giving this as an example as well. So I'm going to be speaking at Trevor's Ideas Festival, and I want to make sure that I have a great speech. Good, that's the situation. What's the context? Well, the context is, this is the first time I've been invited, and I would love to be invited back. So make sure that this speech delivers value. And here are the types of people who are likely to be in the audience. So as you're thinking about my speech, I want you to cater for this type of audience. That's the context, right? Next is R, the role. What role do you want ChatGPT to play? So I will tell it, I want you to play the role of my professional speechwriter who is like an executive assistant. So you know me well, and just in case you want to know me better, here are 3 examples, up to 3 examples. Even one will be helpful, of speeches I've delivered in the past. Why is this important? You need to make sure that it's writing for you and not for anyone else. I, instructions, very specific instructions. I've been given 20 minutes. I want to make sure that I cover 3 to 5 key things that will be of value to people and that they'll be able to use and they will be memorable, right? And I want to make sure that the speech doesn't go over 300 words. I want to weave in stories and I want you to give me outlines of PowerPoint presentations that I can use. You can put all of that in the instructions, right? B, behavior. Now, if you've ever used ChatGPT, and if you've used it long enough, you know that at some stage it's going to give you something that is not correct, but it's going to give it to you very confidently. That's known as a hallucination. It hallucinates, right? So when you listen to the key luminaries in AI who are primarily from the West for now, but we're going to change that in Africa, right? So people like Sam Altman, he will tell you, well, that's just the way the model is at this stage. It will, from time to time, get it wrong, but we've trained it to do it confidently. So you wouldn't be any wiser. So when you get to behavior, you need to start specifying certain things. This is how I want you to behave. If you don't know something, it's okay. Tell me you don't know it. If you need further instructions to give me the best result or output or answer, ask me, right? There's even a trick that many people get told in different AI forums. If you want to get really creative, you can tell it, I will actually give you a tip if you are creative. Some people will say, I'll give you a $100 tip, $1,000 tip, whatever the case is, right? So that's the behavior part. And then E, evaluate. Tell it, I want you to check your work. Right? Accuracy matters. And remember, I told you my situation, I told you my context. So as you go through this, make sure that you scroll through everything else I've asked you for. That's the scribe method. So I taught this to this doctor. She was very happy. She did another speech the other day. I helped her to write the prompt. It's long. Yes, it's longer than saying, give me a speech. But it gives you so much better results, right? Why? Because this tool that's been created that we all associate with AI is one of the most powerful tools that was ever created. I want to give you another tip via a story when it comes to AI. My beloved older brother, Usman, who's 55, I'm 53, we were together in Lomé in July for a medical operation for his second wife. So that tells you that I'm African, even though you hear an American accent. My brother has a second wife. My wife will not allow any conversation around this, so I'm so pleased that we can finally talk in polite company about this. So we were in Lomé for this medical operation for his second wife. And something just told me to share with him the power of ChatGPT. So I said to him, hey, have you heard of ChatGPT? He had not. Now, when I landed here yesterday, I've been asking anyone who would talk to me, have you heard of ChatGPT? I'm very impressed. Most Zimbabweans have heard of ChatGPT. So Usman had not. So I said, okay. Now, this thing is called ChatGPT. This is how it works. Here's a conversation that you can have with it. But I want you to test something. I want you to ask it to talk to you in Creole. So that's our native language. ChatGPT, when we use it in English. Yes? Have you actually tried to use it and type in your own language? There's even a voice version of ChatGPT where you can speak to it. I want you to test this. Ask it. Let's say for argument's sake, your native language is Shona. Tell it, I want you to communicate with me in Shona. So when Usman did this, he was hooked. I saw my 55-year-old brother, who's never seen this technology, was so enamored with it, he could not put it down. That's the power of what AI is bringing, and that's the power of what we as Africans can begin to do with AI. So this is a small story, right? Now, when you're able to communicate in your own language with any technology, immediately you are comfortable, you're comforted, and you're validated. Why? Because most of us have had to, all of our lives, think in a language that's not our original language, interact in a language that's not our original language, and for business, it's fine, but when you're at home and you're relaxing and you're just trying to figure out one or two things, wouldn't it be great if you could actually interact with this technology in your native language? Now, let me get a bit more specific about use cases of AI. So recently, as the African Academy of Artificial Intelligence, we held a meeting with one of the big 4 banks in South Africa. They have a call center that normally interacts with their customers in English. Okay? And in South Africa, they have this demographic division of people that they call LSM. And the lower LSMs talks about folks who have less money than the higher LSMs. But the bulk of the bank's customers, as you would imagine, are lower LSM people. So we were sharing with them that the technology now allows you to have agents or bots that communicate with your customers in their native tongue. So this is a game changer. So just what I was demonstrating to Usman is something that a bank in South Africa is very excited about putting into their call centers. So now that their customers can have natural conversations in their mother tongue with the bank. And then the next thing that we're doing with this particular client is we're taking all this banking language that is so confusing and translating it into everyday language. So this is the power of AI, and this is what's coming in terms of AI in Africa. So, by the way, all of this is completely not scripted because my initial talk had slides, right? But as I had a chance to observe what so far has been shared with us, it just occurred to me that it might be good to start off at this stage by talking a little bit about the technology. And this is just one aspect of what's coming. I thought I could share with you 10 thoughts, 10 thoughts, and then allow you to ask up to 10 questions. I thought we could do this in 20 minutes. So my first thought was this. This technology that I'm sharing with you is something that can help our continent to leapfrog. We've done it in things like communication, where I can remember working at the International Finance Corporation in this telecom sector when I was between my first and second year at Harvard Business School. And at that stage, this was 1996, they were saying, Africa is a basket case. From a telecom's point of view, we can't get enough landlines into people's homes. The infrastructure is really difficult. And then what came along? Cell phones. And we leapfrogged. We didn't need to go through putting landlines in every home. Now we have cell phones in every pocket. So I believe technology always gives us as Africans the opportunity to leapfrog. But there is a but. There are scenarios in which if we don't embrace the technology, if we stick with the fear that it's going to replace us and we don't touch it, we will get left behind. Let me just say that. And these are words that are not mine, but they resonate with me. AI is not going to replace you. Someone who knows AI and uses AI is going to replace you. Let me say that again. If you're afraid that AI is going to replace you, you're looking at the wrong thing. Look at who else is learning AI and how to use it, because that's the person that most likely is going to replace you. But if you're willing to embrace it and learn it, then it can augment you, it can amplify you. And if we collectively as Africans are willing to use it and embrace it, it can help us to leapfrog. The power of this particular technology is that in the investment community, they talk about something called unicorns. These are companies that are startups or relatively young companies, but have already achieved a valuation of $1 billion. It's a big number, you have to stutter, right? So they're worth $1 billion according to the investors. With AI, we're now hearing that you're going to have the first solopreneur, so the first person who doesn't have a team, right? They're one man or one woman show who's going to be able to be worth $1 billion. Why? Because the technology is that powerful. And we're just scratching the surface. The technology allows you to do many things. It improves productivity, and it also allows you to do things that you would normally hire a lot of people to do if you don't have the money to hire them. Now, it can't do it as well as someone who knows the technology, but at least if you're starting out on your own, it can help, right? So that's the first idea I wanted to share with you. Can we go to the next slide? But here's the good news, and if you don't mind, I'm going to stand here so I'm not blocking your view. We, as a people, we're pioneers, we're innovators, and we've already proven that we're early adopters. So this is a timeline of the different things that we as Africans have either been the creators of, the innovators in, or early adopters in. You can pick any one of those and we could have a full conversation about it. At the very end there, you see a gentleman. Some of you may or may not know him. His name is Fred Swaniker. He's originally from Ghana. He's an entrepreneur. He started off with an institution called the African Leadership Academy. And he's been building these wonderful institutions for over 20 years. He's raised over $1.5 billion for his ventures. And he's finally building a company called Sand Technologies, which is one of the most successful and fastest growing AI startups that has come out of Africa. But that company has been around as an idea for close to 10 years. So that's the other thing to think about. AI is new to us today. Many of us mark November, I think it was 23rd, 2023, as the beginning of AI, because that's when ChatGPT was released. AI has been around a lot longer, right? So I hope you get the message. We are pioneers, we're innovators. We can leapfrog through this technology if we're willing to embrace it. There's something we have to talk about though, it's the C word. I'm sorry to bring an impolite word into polite company. Have you heard of this word, compute? Yeah? Now, I became desperately worried when I was at Meta, Facebook, and I heard that Mark Zuckerberg had ordered 65,000 NVIDIA chips. Let me say that again. Meta, Facebook, the parent company of WhatsApp, parent company of Instagram, parent company of Facebook, and also now into VR headsets, ordered 65,000 chips from NVIDIA. Now, for those who don't know, NVIDIA is the company that makes the chips that power all of these AI applications. They have almost a virtual monopoly on it. And the company is so valuable in this space that its valuation went from 1 trillion, actually that's a big number, 1 trillion to 3 trillion in less than 2 years. Let that sink in.
4 trillion now.
Yes, and going to 4 trillion. Yes? Why is this company so valuable? Because if you want to be in the AI space, you need their chips, because their chips are what powers the ability of these models like ChatGPT to do something called computation. So compute is short for computation. If you don't have the ability to have your models compute and compute quickly, your application is going to be considered as an also-ran. What made ChatGPT so fascinating for all of us, and it still does today, is how quickly it does these things, right? You can ask ChatGPT, for example, here's my medical report for my doctor. I am clueless about these medical terms, which I did, by the way. Please explain to me, what does this blood results show? It will tell you, but it will tell you like in real time, right? Okay. So with compute, if you're unable to have that power, you're not able to compete. And I became worried because if Mark Zuckerberg was spending $10 billion to buy these 65,000 chips, my question was, where is Africa in this? Who is buying compute for Africa? Currently, and we should take advantage of it, Mark Zuckerberg's strategy is to do something he calls open source. He didn't create it, but he's using this strategy. So if you want to use any of the AI tools that Meta has, you can use them. You understand? But when you do that, you're also helping Meta by training Meta's model on things that matter to you. And at some stage, and I've done podcasts in the US on this, at some stage when he decides, okay, now I want to charge you, what are you going to do? So we need, as Africans, to begin thinking about how do we solve for this, right? Because generative AI doesn't work without this. And I'm using terms here that I expect that you know, but if in case you don't, when we get to the Q&A part, please ask me. I'm happy to explain them. Here's another thing that worries me. And I don't get worried because I'm an Afro-optimist. I'm not an Afro-pessimist at all. But I am worried that compute and large language models need a lot of energy. Now, ChatGPT hasn't quite replaced Google search yet, but it has the potential to. If you do a Google search, it takes very little energy for you to do the Google search. If you do a ChatGPT interaction, it takes 10 times as much energy. So in a continent where energy is already scarce, how are we going to compete if we have to use these tools that require so much energy? So there is a solution. It's called small language models. Large language models require a lot of energy and a lot of data. Small language models require less energy, less data, and whereas a large language model requires the cloud, a connection to the internet and servers, small language models are on your device. And this is something that Google pioneered, right? So small language models, they just need the data and the power that you have in this device. I think that's Africa's way of leapfrogging. We have to begin to understand it and build applications around it. Professor Lovemore Mbeki, Zimbabwean, and President Thabo Mbeki have had this debate ongoing for some time. Can we intelligently copy as Africans and to find solutions to African problems, or do we need African solutions for African problems? So I've been teaching, as I shared with you at Gibbs for 20 years. I've always thought Professor Mbeki was correct, that President Mbeki was wrong. I now realize in the day of AI, both of them are correct. We do need to copy intelligently, but anything we copy, we have to adapt for Africa. We can't just take something from the West that may not serve us, our people, our culture, our communities, and just use it like that. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I see that by 2050, when our continent will be the most populated continent in the world, we're forecasted to have 2.5 billion people by 2050. I see a transformed Africa. And I think this technology is one of many that can help us to get there if we learn it and embrace it, apply it, and monetize it. I see the Silicon Valley in that time period being here in Africa. Because currently, Silicon Valley is in the West, but the people who dominate Silicon Valley are actually Indians. And they dominated because their governments built institutes to train them on technology. So that's part of my passion. I want to make sure that we build 1 billion African entrepreneurs who we train on technology, right? So we will be the builders of the future Googles, Metas, and NVIDIAs. Because once we know how to do these things, we can do them. We will be the ones on the Forbes billionaire list, dominating it. I expect to see some of you on that list with your picture and a credit to Terrence to say, Terrence motivated me to get on this list. You don't have to give me money, just an acknowledgement. And then for me, more important than anything else, what we bring to the world is this notion of dignity. Many parts of the world, you have economic power, but many people don't live in states of dignity, even in the US. So my vision for us as Africans is through these technologies, when we leapfrog, every African will live with deep dignity and enjoy the highest sense of well-being. Okay, thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. What an amazing start. Shall we give an applause to Terrence? I think so that we don't monopolize. Shall we start with questions from the floor? Any questions as far as Terrence's presentation is concerned? I'm sure you have lots of questions on AI. Yes, Prof. Moya, Gosana?
Thank you very much, Terrence, for that presentation and very informative indeed for some of us all in the of these things.
Yes, sir.
But I think it would be useful for you to also highlight for us
Yes, sir.
some of the risks that are within this technology.
Yes, sir.
Most things come, like a knife.
Yes.
Good things, but you can also use it to kill people. Nuclear energy, same thing.
Yes,
So
sir.
there must be some risk issues.
There.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's a very good question.
Guys, is Terrence's mic on?
Is my mic on?
Sorry about that, good people. Shall we have a couple of questions?
Okay, and then we'll answer them?
Yeah, then
Okay,
we answer, we deal with all of them.
Okay.
Yes?
Thank you, Terrence, for the presentation.
Yes.
I would like you to comment
Sorry, by the end of the 3 days, we'll be knowing each other and we'll be friends. Please introduce yourself as we start so that everybody knows who you are. My apologies.
He did.
Mukosana Moyo. I'm Taurai Kambwe. Right. So there's a talk around some these things, AI, that are for free, so to speak. And the sentiment is when you're not paying for your service, perhaps you are the product.
Yes.
What's the comment around that?
Mm-hmm. There's another question right there, and another one. We'll take 4 questions, and then.
Thank you, Terrence. Very interesting presentation. My question is, my issue with the AI. Since you said it's getting information around the web. How about us content producers? Should we not be one because we're not paid for content that is being used for AI?
Thank you. The last question for the segment. Introduce yourself and.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Mr. Chimanoka from Manscoop. I'm a Value Creation Challenge participant, so I'm from show. So my question to Terrence is, how does the quality of responses differ between the free version of ChatGPT and the paid version of ChatGPT when handling complex or highly specific user instructions as information? Thank you.
Fantastic. Do you want to deal with those questions, starting as you please, either with Nkosana Moyo's big question, the existential threat that some people say AI poses. There's 2 opposing schools of thought. Could you share with the audience what those schools of thought are?
Yes. So first of all, Prof, thank you for that question. It is a technology similar to what you say. A knife is a technology as well. We can use it for good. It can help us to have a good meal and easily cut things. But unfortunately, it could also be used to kill someone. So when it comes to AI, there is a raging debate that's been ongoing for some time. And that debate is AI an existential threat, or is it the greatest boon humanity has ever seen? So those who believe that AI is an existential threat say to us that the day that the machines become smarter than us is the day that humanity starts becoming extinct. Because when the machines become smarter than us, they will become our overlords, and they will make sure they do things that benefit them and not us. One of those proponents is Elon Musk. And when Elon speaks, he has a lot of sway. So his thought experiment is this. All these AI tools, including ChatGPT, are tools that have been trained. Remember, we talked about coding and the algorithm. So they've been trained, and the technology that they're built on is something called neural networks. I promise you I won't get too much more boring, but in the way that technology works, the machines are told, or the artificial intelligence model is told, optimize for this thing. And if you optimize for this thing, then you get rewarded. If you don't get the optimal response, then you get like a punishment. So it's like a reward punishment type thing. And Elon Musk says that a thought experiment is this: tell an AI to manufacture as many paper clips as possible. And the AI most likely is going to manufacture paper clips to try to fill the earth with paper clips, even if that means making humans and all the animals extinct. So that's a thought experiment. But he does have a lot of supporters, including some of the godfathers of AI. Those luminaries do tell us that we have to be concerned about what this technology can do. And they say we shouldn't ignore the real possibilities, that the downside to this technology is, for example, I've told you that a view is that AI won't replace you, but someone who knows AI will replace you. They believe that AI can replace you. And therefore, displacement is something that we should be worried about. Reskilling people is something that we should be worried about. That is a view. On the other side, there are those who believe that the technology is a tool, and we, as we design and develop the tool, need to make sure that we have full control of the tool. So as long as we're designing the tool to continue to serve us, we shouldn't be worried about it being an existential threat. And then the last school of thought comes from Yann LeCun, one of the godfathers of AI, who works at Meta. So I've had the privilege of personally meeting him. And he would tell you that we are overhyping AI, that the technology can do a lot of things, yes, but the things that we then say that it will do in the future is not possible because the technology is not built like that. What the technology is excellent at is taking a lot of data and predicting what should come next. Outside of that, it can't do anything else right now. Now, in the future, there could be developments where it's able to do different things, but based on where it is now and what it would take to get to what we imagine to be the worst case scenario, he doesn't see that happening. So thank you for that question. There is that balance.
Well, there's balance, but I want to push you. Where do you stand as far as that is concerned?
I'm an optimist. So I would not have come to share with you that I think Africa can leapfrog through technology, starting with AI, if I didn't believe the technology is something that we can use for the greater good. But I'm not, it's a very Western expression, I'm not naive and Pollyannish to believe that there's no downside or no risk or no threat. So when I talk to my students at Gibbs, for example, I always tell them, if you are afraid, use that as motivation to upskill yourself.
But should we not be worried that some of the people that say this technology poses an existential threat to human beings are experts like Sam Altman, the OpenAI AI guy? Should we not be worried about that?
We should be concerned. I would not be worried because Sam Altman has been very eloquent in making sure that the public relations for OpenAI benefits OpenAI. So where it's helpful to have people afraid, I think he's dialed up fear. Okay. Where it's not as helpful to have people afraid, he's dialed up hope. So he's very skilled, and it's a credit to him, at manipulating, in the most positive sense of the word, opinion. Why am I not as concerned about the existential threat of AI? I believe Yann LeCun is spot on based on my understanding of where the technology currently is. Here's something we didn't talk about though, Prof, and this could go into your question. If you think about how some leaders are likely to use AI, that is a concern. Because in the West, we already have what we call surveillance capitalism. You know how we love these devices? They spy on us all the time. They spy on us all the time. And sometimes we give them permission to, because we tell them that they can be on. Sometimes we tell them that they cannot be on and they still are on. So if you've ever had the experience of talking to someone about something and then you get an ad, now they think we're stupid. So they say, no. The algorithms are so fine-tuned that they're just guessing about the fact that you want to hear about. No, they're listening. So how could this be misused by a leader, whether in Africa or anywhere else in the world? Unfortunately, we know the reality is when it comes to politics, there are situations where leaders prefer not to have quote unquote opposition. So having devices that allow for listening in on what you're saying, what you're doing, and even these cameras that we're so enamored with, they record us all the time without our knowledge. So that is a concern. So the very notion that if you're not paying for the product or service, you are the product is a very powerful notion. Keep that in mind. So the tech industry has become the most valuable sector of the business world by this model. It's known as the freemium model. When you have a service, you offer it for free. Why? Because you want to build up the number of users as quickly as you can. Once you get to a large enough number, something kicks in known as the network effect. So the more people you have on your platform, like when we talk social media, the more people are going to come to your platform. What the tech industry then does is they quote unquote monetize, they make money from having this community of, in Facebook's case, 3.2 billion people use its products and services every month. Every month. What that allows it to do then is to charge for adverts. And now the adverts are coming to who? You and me, because we're using the platforms. So now the question then becomes, is that a bad thing? And when it's you and me and those of us in this room, we're adults. So that's not such a bad thing, in my opinion. It's not necessarily a moral thing because I think there should be more clarity about that. But from a business point of view, that's not a bad thing. Where it gets bad is when they're dealing with our children. Because there are cases that we know where especially teenage girls have image issues, social challenges based on social media. Because the algorithms are set up to present this image of perfection. And for that stage of life where most of us can remember we're struggling to come into our own and maybe not feeling so hot, sexy, handsome, pretty, it makes a difference. And then also the social media platforms sometimes allow things like cyberbullying to go on because they're still selling their adverts. So that is a concern. So you have every right, in my humble opinion, if your body of work is copyrighted, to sue. Now, easy for me to say because that takes resources. Easy for me to say because the big companies that are using your intellectual property for free have lawyers and they can do many, many things. But when enough people take them to court, they will change their behavior. Because right now what they're doing is they are literally going around the world and finding any information that they can find and putting it into their models. They know they're not allowed to do that, but they're doing it because I think they're banking on it will take a lot of time and effort for you to fight them in court. The free model is of less capability and quality than the paid model. Here's why. If you have a basic query, you can use the free model. I just want to know, for example, some historical facts about Great Zimbabwe. I'm planning to use that for a speech. I can use the free model. But if I am actually trying to make a comparison and link Great Zimbabwe with the Great Wall of Ile-Ife in Benin City in Nigeria, and whether those came before the Great Wall of China, in other words, whether the Chinese copied us in Africa, and I have some complex questions that I need to ask, I'm better off if I'm able to afford the paid model. Why? Because the paid model is geared more towards that complexity. In fact, if you've had this experience with ChatGPT, I think you would validate what I'm saying. If you ask it to do one or two things, no problem. The more things you ask it to do, the quality starts to go down. So that's my comment on that.
I think a big heavy lifting questions around for us in Africa. You raise the issue of compute.
Yes.
You speak about NVIDIA, the chips that NVIDIA is manufacturing. Where does Africa position itself in that space? I see OpenAI and Microsoft buying islands and
Nuclear power
plants.
Yeah.
Where does Africa stand in all those issues, which are going to be foundationally important in terms of driving huge AI going forward? Can we position ourselves policy-wise? And
Thank you for saying that. We are suffering as a continent, and just about every African country is suffering because of policies. And this is not a political statement. It's a business statement. In South Africa, load shedding became the reality for, I think, close to a decade. It's just starting to come out of that, right? I lived in South Africa for 16 years. And why was load shedding there? It's not because South Africa is incapable of producing extra power. It's because the regime that was in place stopped others from being able to provide that power. There's been this notion that IPPs, independent power producers, would be allowed to do certain things, but they were not allowed to do it based on, I guess, what should I say, vested interests, for lack of a better way to put it. So what I see is a business opportunity when it comes to the power needs of the West. So for business entrepreneurs who are able to get the right partnerships with government and to get the right policies in place so we can get into that space, it's a huge opportunity. The fact that they're literally buying or building nuclear power plants because they know that to get the right compute, they need that level of power. And soon enough, what will happen is the grids of these countries, the power grids are going to suffer. And then the governments are going to say, no, you can't keep using it. And they will be forced to look for power outside. So if we can position ourselves to be power producers that are able to export this power, but we need government support.
I think the interesting fact for us in here is that AI is currently consuming 10% of the world's energy.
Yes.
And that's not enough. And that energy actually is going to be the biggest slowing down factor for AI. Okay, and we saw last week energy stocks in nuclear energy stocks going up, including nuclear plants that were almost mothballed.
Exactly.
So we're talking about NVIDIA stock going up, but soon you're going to see your nuclear usage going up. Is that an opportunity for us? Stupid question.
Yes. If there are any entrepreneurs here who are passionate about power, this opportunity is here. It's not coming, it's here. You need to get ahead of it. You need to build capacity, and you need to figure out how to offboard it so they can actually get it into their systems.
One heavy lifting question, synthetic biology and AI. I mean, we are hacking DNA using
CRISPR,
AI. Is that not the biggest threat that AI poses going forward?
Okay, so just to make sure we're on the same page, when we say synthetic biology, are we talking about synthetics in the creation of artificial intelligence through robots, or are we talking about synthetic in the form of like
in the form of stuff that are going to go into you?
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, I just want to be on the same page. Yeah. Is that the biggest threat? I think you can see threats everywhere because technology that feels like magic is scary, right? But I am not sure it's a threat if we have agency and we can choose whether or not we allow these things into our bodies. If the government forces us to put things into our body that we do not want to, I think that's a threat. Yeah. But if I'm allowed, for example, Elon Musk is very clear. He wants to build this, what is called a Neuralink, where there's a chip put into your brain and it links you up with the internet and all that stuff. So if for sci-fi, science fiction movie fans here, if you've ever watched The Matrix, when Neo is being taught how to fight, for example, and it downloads really quickly, that's what Elon Musk is going for. If I have a choice and I can say no, I don't view that as a threat. If I don't have a choice, or if my children don't have a choice, then I view that as a threat.